Hi, and welcome to WordPress Project Management Insights, Episode 5, with me, Tony Zeoli, the founder of Digital Strategy Works, a WordPress consulting and digital strategy company down here in Asheville, North Carolina. I am going to start off by saying that we are changing the name of this webcast from WordPress Project Management Insights to simply PMPress. That's definitely a little bit better, catchier, and shorter to say instead of WordPress Project Management Insights, right? So in this episode, I was going to talk about another topic, but last week I had just something arise in my own work that I wanted to focus on, and that is team communication, between developers, designers, business owners, and project managers and whoever else is on a project. Maybe there's a web producer or someone like that. Sometimes in our WordPress projects, there are only one or two people communicating, and it becomes a little easier to dictate your needs, have someone respond to those needs, and then have conversations around getting what it is that you want to get done completed, right? But the issue when you're working with larger teams is breakdowns in communication. And we've had that throughout the history of our human experiences, breakdowns between organizations, between people, just not clearly communicating needs. And in that, everyone is at fault. Right? No one is perfect. We can't say that every time we jump into a project with our team members that we're going to perfectly convey information across the board to everyone who needs it, and vice versa. So there are strategies that we need to employ as project managers to understand that nothing is perfect, that every project is fraught with difficulties and challenges in terms of time and resources, in terms of who is doing what, when, why, how, and where they're doing it. And we need to build those barriers and or impediments into our project management workflow, so we can know in our own minds what we have to complete, what we have to transition on, what we have to communicate about with every member of our team. So I'll give you an example of something that happened that spurred on this episode. Last week, I was working on a project with my developer who is overseas in a foreign country. He speaks English. It's not like we were having communication issues due to language, but through our project communication software, whether that was Trello or whether that is Slack, there was a bit of a communication breakdown where the developer thought that we weren't going to use any page builder on our project, when we were commencing our project. And therefore, the developer implemented advanced custom fields, which is a plugin for WordPress that allows you to set custom fields in the post page and then maybe create custom page templates so that you can display any data that you've added through those custom fields on a page. Now, we have page builders that are now kind of marrying those concepts, and more people are using page builders to implement something that maybe Advanced Custom Fields might have done well in the past. Of course, Advanced Custom Fields is a very powerful plugin, especially the Pro plugin if you do upgrade to it. But regardless, what we're talking about is simply the issue of team communication, where I had said in my Slack channel and in some other communications that we weren't going to use a page builder. But appended to that, I said we weren't going to use Visual Composer, which had come with this theme that we were going to employ. So I didn't mean that we weren't going to use any page builders. I meant that we weren't going to use Visual Composer, a page builder. And while I thought I was clear on that, the developer thought otherwise and went ahead and implemented advanced custom fields. Now, the developer implemented that without checking back and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to go with. Let's talk about the impact of that decision. And that's the second part of this is when there's a breakdown in communication, there are the two people that are working on a project in tandem, or many people, all have their own ideas of what they can support over time, what tools they like to use, what processes they like to follow, what things they want to put in place to potentially future-proof their product so that they don't run into issues in the future. So let's look at that decision. The decision point where there was the breakdown of do we use a page builder or not. So in the developer's mind, page builders can cause page bloat. But in my mind, without actually A/B testing the solutions, how can we know that they can cause page bloat? So I have to trust the developer's skill set and knowledge that there may be page bloat. But then again, different page builders function differently and they're built differently. And maybe the one that I'm selecting for the project is really advanced and won't cause the bloat that the developer thinks it will. And potentially, when the developer then goes to make his own decision and implement advanced custom fields, then he's making a distinct decision to create a page template that really only developers can then modify. And we use page builders so we can not avoid using developers, but reduce the need for developers on simple page templates that we can update and modify in the future. We can set backgrounds, we can set background colors, we can set background videos, we can set font styles. We can do all kinds of things with page builders today that we don't need a developer for. Whether you want to move around an object on a page, drag and drop tools, all these kinds of new functionality have come into page builders. But that doesn't mean we throw out the baby with the bathwater and ignore the advantages of advanced custom fields either. But it comes back to the conversation. We didn't have the conversation about my ideas along the trajectory of the project that I believe can and should be followed. And in my line of thinking, I'm also thinking about the future. Okay, the content manager, the website editor, the client, are they going to understand advanced custom fields? Or could I train them on the page builder, and could they be better served in the future by being able to manage the content and move blocks around themselves? All that thinking and all those decision points need to be discussed amongst the developer, the business owner, and the project manager before someone makes a decision to go in a specific direction. Now, fortunately, I think the developer made a decision based on not knowing and or not understanding clearly the need to work with this project with a specific page builder. And he just went on and said, okay, I'm going to implement this with ACF. We then got the business owner on the phone. I got on the phone, I should say screen share tool. We're using Zoom.us, which is a great screen share tool and video conferencing software. We all got on, we all looked at ACF, and we all looked at the advantages and disadvantages, and that's when we were able to make a more foundational decision based on everyone's critical feedback at that point. And then we decided we'd move forward with ACF and ignore the page builder functionality. In my mind, I'm comfortable with that now based on what the developer told me, how he sees this advancing the project, and all these kinds of things. But we should have had that conversation earlier on and made absolutely sure that the decision point that we were reaching was the right decision point for the project, for the client, and even for the developer. I mean, there are costs also. There are financial costs. There are employee costs. There are project costs, right? They're not just financial, but in terms of resource allocation and these kinds of things, and time management. It all seems simple in the beginning. Oh yeah, let's just build this thing, and everyone just kind of runs at it and starts throwing ideas around and willy-nilly, and it all goes into the shell. And then what ends up happening is you always have to pull back, make your assessments, make your decisions, make your determinations. That way you can know where you're going to go 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and maybe even 3 years down the road. Because if we make these decisions in a vacuum by ourselves, then we're not really considering the long-term impact of even the simplest decision. How am I going to code this box? How am I going to, what plugin am I going to add, and why? Right? Does that plugin have a license key? Can I pass that license key on to my client, or is my client going to be able to register their own copy and manage their own license key? There are 100 questions that come up in terms of almost every decision that we make in WordPress design and development. And those things are just not apparent to the layperson, to the business owner, and even to the developer, because everyone has their own agenda. And it's not bad to have your own agenda, but what you want to do is marry your agenda to someone else's agenda. Of course, that's why we get married, and conceptually as human beings, right? My agenda is my wife's agenda, it's my child's agenda, the teacher's agenda. Everyone has an agenda. So we remember that sometimes in our own family lives, but in our projects, we forget that. So what I want to transition to are a few concepts that I learned when I went back to school at New York University and got my degree in digital communications and media. I had an organizational behavior class, and it was really eye-opening because the instructor taught me two things that semester that really stuck with me, and I'll show you what those two things are. The first thing is the concept of Johari's window, right? So I found this website, communicationtheory.org, talks about the Johari's window model, and what we see here is the 4 panes of Johari's window. The first pane up here on the left, let's talk about the core concepts: known to self and not known to self. So you have an open area that you know about yourself or is known to others, right? You have something that's not known to self or not known to others, and that's or is known to others but not known by yourself. That's the blind spot, right? Then you have a hidden area that's not known to others, but you know. And then you have something called the unknown, right? So it's like what I can see about you that you can't, what I can see about you that you can't see about yourself, what someone else can see about me that I can't see about myself, hidden areas, judgments, these kinds of things. And then there's the unknown, what we can't see about each other yet. Right. So, and what we can both see about each other. So there are a bunch of concepts in there that are interesting to go over. And you may want to check into this website, communicationtheory.org, the Johari window model, and you can read about the open self area or arena, the blind self or blind spot, the hidden self or facade, and the unknown area, right? Then you kind of go down here and you can see these things can be adjusted. We may want to hide some information from someone or for some reason that we may deem important, or maybe it's unimportant, who knows, but you can extend the hidden area, or maybe they gave an example where, Linda at an office. Here's the example under figure 1 here. Linda spent most of her free time sketching in the office, which was her preferred pastime, and her coworkers found her very shy and elusive. So somebody made a decision, right? Oh, she must be shy and elusive. But then when she got that feedback, she said, oh my goodness, I was just really just doing my work. Maybe I should be a little bit more outgoing. And then that balanced out, what people really thought of her, and that then kind of created more opportunity to get to know Linda. Right, so that's the concept of Johari's window, of what we can see about each other, what we can't see about ourselves, that we really need to apply in project management, because I can't get mad at my developer now and point a finger and say that was your fault. Whose fault was it? Was it my fault for not being clear enough? Was it his fault for not asking the question? I thought I was clear. He took it another way, and then we have to come back to agree that, okay, we miscommunicated, so now let's get back on the same page. And I've been in work environments where when there is that miscommunication, it can be really challenging, because the project manager, may not have ever heard of Johari's window and may not practice this type of project management, personality kind of driven observations, and then there's anger and maybe finger pointing and these kinds of things, when potentially that person could be at fault, but they just can't see that about themselves, right? So we really want to follow this Johari's window model when we're working with project management. The next concept that my professor in organizational behavior taught me during that semester was your perception is your reality. Really, the way people view you and the way you present yourself is the impression you will leave behind, right? And things are not always as they seem, right? Your perception at one minute is not someone else's perception. Your perception is your reality at the time that you make that determination. And once you make that determination, it's in your mind that is the objective. But the other people that are on the project, don't have access to inside your brain. And so once you've made those judgments, those determinations, those perceptions, and you've moved forward on those perceptions, then that can cause a stumbling block where other people would say, oh, well, didn't you know that? You didn't know this, so I don't understand why you made a determination based on that, right? But it was your immediate perception. So we have to learn, that say someone doesn't answer an email for a week, you might get mad and say, hey, my client hasn't answered an email for a week. I've been trying to contact them. I've called them on the phone. I've left a message. And there can be some kind of sense of anger or fear or whatever it is. Oh, is my client mad at me? Is my client upset about something that we did? It could be simply that your client's 4-year-old, came down with a really bad illness, and they just dropped the ball and went on to deal with that illness. And you didn't know that. And then when they come back, you had this whole fear-based mentality, and you get on the phone with them and you're like, well, what's wrong? And they're like, oh, nothing was wrong. I just had to deal with a sick child for a week, right? So we just have to try to build in the Johari's windows model and the perception as reality model into our everyday project management, so we don't finger point, so we don't say that someone isn't performing or underperforming, because it could be very well ourselves who didn't lend out information, who didn't lend out knowledge, who didn't over communicate. And that's why over communication is sometimes so critical. And there are people in organizations that can't stand over communicators because they think, they know something, they know everything, but it's really good to listen to people when they communicate, whether they under communicate or over communicate, so you can know all the answers to the questions and then move forward with your project and your project's goals, right? So those are a couple of concepts that I really wanted to talk about today in this video. And I've worked on over 300 WordPress projects and probably over 500 web development projects since 1995 when I got started in this business. And I continue to make mistakes today. You would think someone like myself with so much experience would have this down pat. But every project has a different team. Every project has different communication style. Every project has different communication tools. On one project I might be using Basecamp. On another project I might be using Slack. And then on another project I might be using Slack combined with Trello. And then in another project I might be using Asana with a client. So in my project management workflow, I'm using multiple softwares. I'm talking to many different people. And then I have my own personal issues, with family, with, maybe I want to go work out, or maybe I need to do some yard work or something like that. And I'm going to have my own, frustrations and joys and these kinds of things. So project management doesn't have to be perfect. What we have to do, I think, is find kindness and find the ability through Johari's window and through your perception as your reality to manage expectations and to realize that things can fall short, or we undercommunicated, or we're over communicating. All those kind of things come into play. But what I really appreciate about the Agile Scrum method is that it says in the project management workflow to include everyone. And that means the business owner. And sometimes business owners don't want to be included in the process. They just want you to tell them that things are good, that things are moving along. But if they're not involved in the process on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you're not checking in with them, and they're not able to jump into a project, well, first, they're kind of missing the whole scope. They may not know why decisions have been made. They may see things and say, oh, I really wanted it this way, but why did you do it that way? Then you have to backtrack and answer questions when you were trying to look for answers previously. So, one of the goals in today's web development project management process is to really get the business owner involved and really be clear and really be open and not hide conversations from that owner. What I like to do is have my business owners be included in on every conversation, whether they have to mute their emails or their Slack or whatever have you, that's up to them. But by including them in every conversation, at least they can jump in and dive in when they want. They can get a piece of information when they want. And what does that mean? Communicating with your developers and your designers and your freelance teams that you've got a business owner and that your communication should be tight. It should be about the project, and we should try not to include outside noise into the project, because you want the business owner to be involved every step of the way. So that way they can jump in if they see it going in a different direction and saying, hey, wait, that way they can save potential time, hours, money, dollars, resource allocation, where someone could be working on one piece and then they have to switch off to another because they have to come back and fix something that wasn't very clear. So it's really, project management is really not that simple and as structured as you think it is. You have to make it as structured as you want it to be. But being clear with the entire team that as a project manager, ultimately they should all come to you with these decisions or questions or whatever thinking is going on. So you as a project management can digest that information and then regurgitate it and spit it out into the project communication channels. That way everyone's updated and aware of what's going on. So I hope that that this session gave you some food for thought that you can bring back into your own WordPress project management product lifecycle, development lifecycle, and that it will help you in some way. If you have any questions, hit me on Twitter at Tony Zeoli, TonyZeoli, or hit me on Facebook, same thing, but I have Tony Zeoli WP as as my page there, my business page for Tony Zeoli as a consultant and trainer. Or, you could make a comment right here on the YouTube channel, and I'll try to respond to them and do the best I can to get back to you. So thank you for watching the new PMPress, formerly WordPress Project Management Insights. Visit us at digitalstrategyworks.com to see some of the work that we're doing. And follow us on LinkedIn. We're everywhere. We're everywhere out there where digital lives. So until the next time, thank you for tuning in, and just keep managing those WordPress projects and to the best of your ability. Tap into these two sites. Learn more about Johari's window. Learn more about perceptions of reality, and apply them into your project management workflow as best as you can.